In this lecture, we will go over derivative markets and instruments. This is an introductory reading. We will talk about the definition of derivatives, the structure of the derivatives markets, and then we will talk about different types of derivatives. This section is quite long, but most of what you will see in this section will be covered in much more detail in subsequent readings. So what I will do is cover the material at a level which will be sufficient for you to answer the questions in the examples in this reading and the questions at the end of this reading. And my advice will be that you come back to this material or come back to the questions after you have done the other readings which are part of the derivatives course. In section 5, we will talk about the purposes and benefits of derivatives. Then we will go over the criticism and misuses of derivatives. And finally, we will cover the elementary principles of derivative pricing. Here is the basic definition. A derivative is a financial instrument which derives its value from an underlying asset. And I have asset here in parentheses because sometimes the underlying might not be an asset. The underlying might be an interest rate. And the curriculum goes into a lot of detail related to this definition, but I feel that at this stage, as long as you know this basic definition, you are in good shape. But it is important to understand a few important points. The derivative is a legal contract. It is a piece of paper, an agreement or a contract, which is based on something else. That something else is called the underlying. And this image is good to keep in mind. So the derivative is the contract or the agreement which is based on an underlying asset. We will call the underlying an asset for now because that is easier to think about. A really simple contract is one where two parties, let's say party A and party B, agree that after 6 months, party A will sell a given stock, let's say stock XYZ, to B. This is a contract. The sale or the transaction is not happening now. The two parties are agreeing to conduct this transaction after 6 months. The underlying in this example is the stock XYZ. The two parties involved are A and B, and note that at this stage, all they are doing is signing a contract or coming to an agreement. This contract is a derivative. The value of this contract or the performance of this contract will depend on the underlying. And to make this more concrete, let's say that this agreement is that A will sell the stock to B for $50. That will also be written in the contract. Now, what is the value of this contract over time, and specifically what is the value of this contract after 6 months? Clearly, the value depends on how this underlying stock performs. If the underlying stock does extremely well and goes up in value to say $75, then clearly this contract is valuable for party B, which is buying the underlying asset for 50. So notice that the value of the contract or the performance of the contract is based on the performance of the underlying asset. The terminology that is used for these two parties is long and short. The long is the party that is going to buy the underlying asset, and the short is the party which is going to sell the underlying asset. There are many types of derivatives that we will be talking about later in this lecture as well as in subsequent readings. Another important term to learn here is risk management. The reason we need to learn this is because one of the primary use of derivatives is to manage risk. Risk management is the process by which an organization or individual defines the level of risk it wishes to take, measures the level of risk it is taking, and adjusts the latter to equal the former. This is a slightly complicated definition, but what it is saying is fairly simple. Organizations take on different kinds of risk, and when organizations recognize that risk and take actions to control or manage that risk, then the process that they go through is called risk management. And the link here is that derivatives can be used to manage risk. If you think about the example that I just gave you, we have a given stock such as XYZ which will perform in a certain way. A derivative which is based on XYZ could be used to manage the risk associated with this stock. And as you understand derivatives over the next few lectures, you will get a sense for how various types of derivative instruments can be used to manage risk. Now let's go over some questions in the curriculum, and these questions are presented in example 1 in the curriculum. Which of the following is the best example of a derivative? A global equity mutual fund, a non-callable government bond, a contract to purchase Apple computer at a fixed price. The correct answer here is C, because this is a contract. Two parties are signing a contract to execute a transaction at a fixed price, probably at some point in the future. Let's see if you can answer this question now. Which of the following is not a characteristic of a derivative? And underlying, this is a characteristic, we just talked about it, so that's not the right answer. Low degree of leverage, let's put a question mark here for now. Two parties, a buyer and a seller. We've already talked about this. This is a characteristic and therefore not the right answer. The correct answer then is low degree of leverage. This is not a characteristic of a derivative. Try this now. Again, the question is asking for which statement is not true. They are created in the spot market. They are used in the practice of risk management. We've just talked about the fact that this is a major use of derivatives. So that is a true statement and therefore not the right answer. They take their values from the value of something else. This is also a true statement and therefore not the correct answer. The correct answer is A. Derivatives are not created in the spot market. Section 3. The structure of derivative markets. Broadly speaking, we have two categories: exchange-traded derivative markets and over-the-counter derivatives markets. Futures contracts are traded on exchanges, and we will see this material in a lot of detail when we do the reading on futures contracts. But at a high level, here is what you need to recognize. With exchange traded markets, we have an exchange in the middle. A classic example of an exchange would be the CME or the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and futures contracts trade on this exchange. What the exchange does is it defines standardized contracts where everything is standardized except the price. As an example, the exchange might define a standardized contract for gold. Here it will be defined that this is the quality of gold, this is the quantity, here is where the gold will be delivered, and so on. The only thing not defined will be the price. The price is determined in the market by the buyers and the sellers, or we can say the long and the short parties. then the long and short parties interact with each other through the exchange. We will have a long party which will deal with the exchange and a short party which will also deal with the exchange. The exchange is responsible for what is called the clearing and settlement process. Clearing refers to the process by which the exchange verifies the execution of a transaction and records the participants' identities. Settlement refers to the process whereby the exchange transfers money from one participant to the other. That is all I'll say at this stage related to this point, and as I mentioned before, we will see this material in more detail when we do futures. All contract terms are standardized except for price. We've already talked about this. Because the contracts are standardized, that makes them more liquid relative to the over-the-counter market. Also, these transactions are more transparent. The price, for example, is published. The contracts are standardized. So these transactions and these markets are more transparent relative to the over-the-counter markets. The exchange also helps ensure that there is no credit risk. And as we'll see in the reading on futures contracts, any party that wants to engage in transactions over here needs to post a margin or what is also called a performance bond, which helps ensure that there is no default. The other attribute of exchanges is that generally there is a daily mark-to-market or daily settlement. Any party that is winning because the price of the underlying changes, that party is compensated at the end of the day, and the party that might be losing will have to make a payment at the end of the day. And this again is material that we will see in more detail later. At this stage, you need to recognize that credit risk is effectively eliminated when we do transactions through an exchange. The other type of market is the over-the-counter market. This is an informal network of market participants. This is also called a dealer market because we have a network of dealers. So these market participants are the dealers who network with each other and buy and sell either with each other, or they might also interact with what's called end users. These might be corporations that need to hedge their risk. The derivatives in this market tend to be less liquid compared to derivatives which are traded on an exchange. These are private transactions between different entities, so these transactions are less transparent compared to exchange traded markets, and the contracts or the agreements are customized. So two parties A and B can agree on any terms that they want. That's why we say that these transactions are customized. We will see this material in more detail when we do forward contracts later in the derivatives segment of the curriculum. The final point I'll make on the slide is that market makers make money or make a profit through what is called the bid-ask spread. What a market maker does is interact with different parties. So if a given party A wants to take a long position, then the market maker will take the opposite position or a short position, and then the market maker will find another party, let's say party B, with whom this market maker will take a long position. In other words, with party A, the market maker is going to take a short position. So the market maker is saying that he will sell, and over here with party B, the market maker is saying that he is taking a long position, which means that he will buy. And these two cancel each other out. So no matter what happens to the underlying, whether the price goes up or down, the market maker is covered. So how does the market maker make money? That would be through what's called the bid-ask spread. The amount at which the dealer or the market maker will buy is called the bid price, and this is going to be lower than the ask price. The ask price is how much the market maker will sell for. The difference between these two numbers is called the bid-ask spread, and generally this is where the market maker makes a profit. Let's go over example 2 from the curriculum now. And I want you to try this before you look at the solution. Which of the following characteristics is not associated with exchange-traded derivatives? Margin or performance bonds are required. Remember, these are generally required with exchange-traded derivatives. So these are required. The exchange guarantees all payments in the event of default. Again, given that there is no credit risk, that is because the exchange is guaranteeing payments. So this is a characteristic. All terms except the price are customized to the party's individual needs. Now, customization is associated with over-the-counter markets, not with exchange-traded markets. So this is not a characteristic of exchange-traded markets, hence C is the correct answer. Which of the following characteristics is associated with over-the-counter derivatives? Trading occurs in a central location. They are more regulated than the exchange-listed derivatives. They are less transparent than the exchange-listed derivatives. Hopefully you recall from the previous slide that exchange-listed derivatives are less transparent, so this is the correct answer. But through this question you can see another couple of important points. I didn't say this explicitly, but you might imagine that an exchange would have a central location. So the Chicago Mercantile Exchange obviously is based in Chicago. Over-the-counter markets have dealers that could be all over a country, or in a global market they could be all over the world. They are more regulated than exchange-listed derivatives. Actually, exchange-listed derivatives tend to be more regulated, and over-the-counter markets are less regulated. Market makers earn a profit in both exchange and over-the-counter derivatives markets by charging a commission on each trade, a combination of commission and markups, buying at one price, selling at a higher price, and hedging any risk. And this is what we talked about. Market makers make money based on the bid-ask spread, and that is what is described over here. So C is the correct answer. Which of the following statements most accurately describes exchange-traded derivatives relative to over-the-counter derivatives? Exchange-traded derivatives are more likely to have greater credit risk. Remember, we said exchange-traded derivatives effectively have no credit risk, so this can't be right. Standardized contract terms, that looks right. Greater risk management uses, this is not necessarily true. Both exchange-traded derivatives and over-the-counter derivatives have risk management uses. So the most accurate statement is B.